Hi everyone, just a further review on the XT1, Fuji XT1. Firstly, just want to thank everyone who actually subscribed and watched my first video. I was quite overwhelmed that it actually had some following, and I hope it was beneficial to you. Certainly with some of the comments and advice I received, also very beneficial to me, so I thank you for that. We're quite a few months down the line now from when I initially looked at the camera. I was kindly given a copy, or a body and a lens to use by Fuji South Africa, and if you see in the first review, I was trying to sort of ascertain where I could put it in my camera bag and use it for work, maybe leaving out one of my DSLRs, using another, and then somehow bring it in. Initially I thought it probably wasn't going to be something I could do, but I was intrigued enough by the camera and I ended up purchasing one. So I now own the Fuji X-T1. I don't own the X Pro one anymore, but I have two lenses, and I've actually ended up using it more than I thought I would. In my work, I get to travel a lot. I've been in quite a few countries in the last year, and often what happens is I get a couple of days before the shoot just to venture out and see the city or the area that I'm in. And what I'm going to do is put some pictures up now during this review of photos I've done with the camera, more just to show you the quality of it. I often have short stops, so I'm sort of maybe on the streets for like half a day or a day if I'm lucky to photograph certain areas. So I'm going to put up some photos I did in New York City as well as Cuba, around Cuba. And yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, a lot of these shoots I did with the camera I chose to shoot on RAW and JPEG, but I landed up just on the flight home picking up, exporting the JPEGs through the Wi-Fi onto my iPad and just editing them through the Lightroom app. And I'm just so impressed with with Fuji's JPEG results. I mean, they must be the best JPEGs I've seen from a camera. camera's undergone quite a few firmware updates since the first review, so that first review is almost null and void because they've really updated a few things, or many things that I initially thought were my main problem, the reason why I wouldn't buy the camera. I personally have added a couple of things to the camera. I put on the bigger grip. The bigger grip has certainly helped me. I don't have huge hands, but large enough not to be comfortable with the original grip that the camera comes with. So I extended that. I also got the extended eye cup, which has been fantastic. I mean, the eye cup, the initial eye cup, really battled in bright sunlight. And here in Cape Town, South Africa, even when I'm traveling, sunlight is all around. And light getting in between your eye and the eye cup created problems, especially with an electronic viewfinder. So this has been great. So anyone looking to get the camera, those two things I'd recommend. The grip, obviously depending on how big your hand is, but certainly the eye cup is something I would definitely add to it. The grip's great. It actually adds a bit of depth, or height should I say, to the body of the camera, and just makes it a little bit more substantial. Now, remembering back onto my first review, one of the big problems that I had with the camera was off-camera flash, which makes up a large part of my work. When I do wedding work, which is the majority of my work, I use a lot of off-camera flash. Now, DSLRs, I'm so accustomed to them, and using the mirror, or the the viewfinder with the mirror, I'm able to have backlit situations or underexposed images, and then full with the flash, but still being able to see my customer or my client's face. So I can still look at expressions while I'm deliberately underexposing to maybe bring in the sky or a beautiful sunset, and then lighting them up with the flash in front just to get that great exposure all the way through. And that was something I really battled with this, because as soon as you underexpose it in the viewfinder, you obviously don't see your client's face, and expressions are very important. So actually in the comments I got back on that was, look into the menu, you can turn the picture effect off, and then I think it was soon afterwards, the first update that I got since purchasing the camera was a natural live view, where it not only in manual mode, what you can do is you can actually turn off the picture effect, but then the camera boosts the image brightness irrespective of your exposure. So it doesn't correspond with your exposure at all. It gives an independent view through the EVF, which I must admit did help a bit. Admittedly, I haven't used the Fuji X-T1 that much at weddings, or extensively at weddings. Occasionally when I get a chance where I find that if the shoot is a little bit more slow paced and I have a little bit more time, I have brought the Fuji out to experiment a bit, and these are examples of off-camera flash used with the Fuji X-T1. Most of them are with the 14 2.8. I think one or two, maybe three, are with the 3514. But these are heavily backlit situations that I've come across. I mean, obviously the shot doesn't really show how badly backlit it was, but all of these situations, whether they were naturally lit shots without flash or with flash, were all heavily backlit. And I was forced to, in this situation, use the option where in manual mode you're turning off picture effect, you're turning off picture exposure, and you're turning off picture white balance. So you're getting a totally natural view. And it's normally sufficient for most of the things I do. Sometimes what it interprets as the correct EVF brightness is still a little bit under what I'd like it to be. So there is a little bit of a trick that I've accidentally learnt, because I accidentally knocked the light metering modes, which is below the shutter speed dial. And if you have a look at that, you've got your 3 light metering modes. When you're in full manual and you've got this picture effect off, or the exposure off, to get this independent EVF brightness, do yourself a favor and just turn it to spot metering, which is the one with just the dark circle in the middle, so all centered weighted light metering. You'll find that even this, because the independent EVF brightness is even associated with what your light metering is, because it's still evaluating something. So turn it to spot, and you'll find you may even get a couple more stops, or maybe a stop or so of light more in your brightness of your EVF, which then even help me even further. So yeah, these are examples where it's so important to see expressions in these shots, because you're asking your client to do something. So this is what I initially battled with, and certainly has improved dramatically. And I hope with future cameras that it will even improve a lot more. So try out that little trick. You might find it will help you. The new firmware update, which I think now is version 4, has made really radical changes, drastic changes. I'm finding the focus far snappier. The options that you have within focus with your tracking, and then the areas you can choose, the extended areas. Maybe some people like to use face detection, eye detection. I haven't really, I mean, I come from a DSLR background, so to bring it in, as it feels a little bit gimmicky, but I've used it once or twice in private settings or personal capacity, and wow, it's really effective. I mean, if you want to pick up on that left eye, that right eye, or the face, boom, it finds it. So you never know, I might end up using that more often. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but it's been an incredible couple of months for gear in general. I'm in a position now where I actually don't know what to do going forward from a gear perspective, because my gear has come to the end of its cycle. Both my 5D Mark III bodies have, done their 2 to 3 years and a ton of work. So I'm looking now to change, but it's not just the obvious. If you were in the Nikon camp, you'd just go for another Nikon and keep your lenses. And the same with Canon. You wouldn't just step into Canon again, because now, a company like Sony has just released the new A7RII with the Metabones adapter. You can use all your L glass, and with amazing focus results or autofocus results. So it's an incredibly tough time now to choose which gear to go with, because the options aren't just your obvious ones anymore. So at the moment, my thoughts are sort of, stick with the X-T1, maybe get a second body, maybe get more primes, where I would probably look to get the 23, 35, which I have, maybe the, which I also have the 56, and maybe get the 90, and that will cover a great sort of focal length range that suits my work. I may, however, change out the 14 2.8 for the 1024, because it's sort of, I find at that wide range I need a bit more versatility. It's harder to sort of cover certain aspects of events or weddings when you at that sort of wide angle. You have to have the ability to sort of go in if you need to at when something's required to do so. You might have a wide of the dance floor, and then you've got 3 people in front of you who want a photograph, and you're not standing 3 meters in front of them. You might be 5 meters back. It's nice just to have that zoom, boom, get in, get that shot without having to climb over people to get there. So there's certain aspects of my work that I could require a sort of a wide zoom, which is what I was doing with my DSLRs. I had my primes, but I still had my wide zoom for that exact function. So there's a bit I need to look into. I could go the Sony route and use the Metabones, and I can still keep my L glass, and then maybe just keep one of these bodies, and somehow find a compromise where I use the 35 and the 85 on the Sony, and then maybe use different primes on the X-T1. With the Canon gear, they've released the 5D SR. I'm really just looking at a 5D Mark III with a 50 megapixel sensor. I'm not quite sure if the majority of us are screaming out for 50 megapixels. Maybe you guys are. I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear what you guys say in the comments. I'm not quite sure about that. I don't know if they're trying to entice, medium format users from spending 10 grand on a camera, $10,000 on a camera now, to step back and pay less for a DSLR with huge megapixels. But we know that a 35mm format camera is not a medium format camera. It doesn't have the same characteristics. The look of the image is totally different. So I'm not quite sure what market they're going to. I'm not sure if there's a market out there for people looking to print massive prints. Maybe landscape photographers, maybe that would be their key. But I was hoping that Canon would at least come out with something that's a real update from the 5D Mark III, something that's going to, fill that sort of need, but in a more advanced camera. And I think maybe Sony has done that. Now, I used to say Canon hasn't got a trick up their sleeve, so it's a tough thing. Do we invest in this and then this? But at least Sony gave us the option of using the the Canon glass on the Sony body, which is amazing. So yeah, it's tough decisions at the moment. I really like the idea of the 2 X-T1s, because I think that the image quality and even the megapixel count for me in the work that I do is more than enough. And I think having 2 of these with just 5 primes, and the bag that I would have to travel around with would be so much smaller, and it may just make life a whole lot easier. And then maybe rent these big bodies when need be. yeah, so it's exciting times, but tough times, and yeah, and I'd just like to just sort of maybe end off with just another, again, just commending Fuji. I mean, they've done an incredible job here with their firmware updates, and wow, what an enjoyable camera, and I'd highly recommend this camera to any of you guys. But, you know, not just, I mean, I initially said in the first review, newbies, maybe people who want to do lightweight cameras and mirrorless. You know, this camera is now capable of doing a lot of what we did, or I do on my DSLRs. I'd say probably it's up to about 95%. When I initially got the X-T1, it could only maybe do about 70 to 80%. And that was enough for me to say, you know, I can't use that. It's not worth taking along because it's not fulfilling that need. But I think it's really getting close, and I think those sort of that 5 to 10% that I'm not getting on my not getting with what I had with my DSLR, I could possibly, you know, have workarounds, figure out ways of implementing different, maybe not, I wouldn't say tricks, but just you know, just using the camera in a different way, and maybe experimenting with different things that sort of covers that sort of 5-10%, and then make it just the camera that I use, which is quite exciting. So it'd be interesting to hear what you guys have to say, how you felt the X-T1 has come a long way, and also with the gear going forward. What are you guys looking at gear-wise? Certainly exciting. Thanks so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the photos that I put up to see what the camera can do from that perspective. I do apologize to anyone who lives in New York. I know they're very touristy type photos, but I only had half a day to get out there and get those spots. So I did go to the tourist spots. I'd love to go back again to New York and, you know, spend more time on the streets photographing a wider variety. But I'm hoping that you got an idea of how powerful this little camera can be as a travel camera, as a camera to document street and so on. Thanks for your time, guys, and God bless.